So this is a video of the next part of the Malfoy Manor recreation. I forgot that it's summer and that I have a lot more time, just like free time, so I'm able to get this up a lot earlier than I had previously anticipated, which I was super excited about. So anyway, in this part we're primarily going to be furnishing, I believe. So right now we're starting with what I would call the drawing room. Um, so basically what this is kind of like a guest room. Like, it's not a living room, it's not a dining room, it's just kind of like a room that people just kind of like hang out and have meetings in, would be the best description. So this room is made to model after the room showed in the Deathly Hallows, where they kind of have that meeting in the very beginning. So if you remember, it's like at the very, very beginning when Snape comes and the other Death Eaters are there and stuff, and they have that meeting and Voldemort's there. It's that room. That's what this is designed to model after. So it's just this big, huge table with all of these chairs, and I even scaled up that fireplace to make it seem super grand as well. And then, so yeah, it's just kind of a big like meeting room for everybody to kind of just talk in. Also, throughout this video, or throughout the build, I take advantage of all the chandeliers. I use a ton of chandeliers because I think they look super cool in this build. Obviously it's a castle, so I'm pretty sure that chandeliers with candles would be what they would be using. So that was really cool, and it creates like this cool like yellow glow to the room that the other lights don't. So I think that's a really cool like aspect to the build as well. But anyway, this is one of those builds where I really wish we had creative style again, because as you could see with that painting, all of the frames were like yellow and gold and orange and stuff like that, and none of those really fit the style. So I kind of just had to, pick the best option and just go with it, even though I would have loved to have like a silver or a black frame. So yeah, I think that's one thing that this game is particularly lacking now, is just the lack of creative style, especially because we had it in the previous game. So yeah, some of these things I kind of just had to, you just got to ignore because it's the best option we have at this point. I don't really know if we're going to get another kind of supernatural expansion, obviously. We just got vampires, so I don't know if they're going to kind of expand upon that and do like witches and zombies and stuff like they usually do, like the franchise normally does, or if if vampires are where they're at and that's where it's going to stay. I don't know, obviously. I don't work at EA. So I think that this video, or that this house build, could be really, really cool if there was more kind of supernatural items in that like gothic aspect. But like I said, this is kind of the best I could do furnishing wise. So I think you'll probably see a lot of the items are often repeated just because, that's the best we have. So just keep that in mind, please. And then, like I said in the previous part, the furnishing that I chose to do for this was the idea of it being furnished like before the Death Eaters take over, just because I feel like it would be fun to furnish like that super grand castle. I didn't make it like kind of fallen apart or messy or anything like that, although that would be kind of fun to furnish as well. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this. And then one other thing to keep in mind regarding the furnishing that I chose is just that I wanted it to be kind of a cold, dark castle, if that makes sense. So I think I was kind of thinking it in comparison to another house. So for example, in the Harry Potter series, the Potters, like James Potter, like that generation, his family is supposed to be super wealthy, and I think they even talk about Potter Manor at some point in the book, or the books, I mean. And so I would imagine that their kind of castle would be really fancy but warm too. So like lots of like plush armchairs and that kind of thing. But I don't think that that's what the Malfoy mansion would be like at all. I think it would be all stone and rock and dark wood and just no warmth. So I tried to not put a lot of clutter because I feel like that kind of shows a lot of warmth, if that makes sense. So a lot of the furnishing may seem like plain, but I did that intentionally because I wanted it to seem cold and harsh. But anyway, now we're moving on to the dining room, and I thought it was kind of cool to have this big long table with just a few chairs around it, because obviously in the Malfoy family there's the two parents and then Draco, obviously, so it's not like there's a ton of people in the family, and I feel like it would be kind of intimidating to like sit there and talk to them, you know. So I don't know, I thought that was kind of a cool idea. And then as you can see, I'm taking advantage of those chandeliers again, just to make it seem really grand and old at the same time. And then again, a little rant regarding creative style, the absence of creative style. Curtains are so hard to pick out because half of the curtains have like really like infantile looking colors, and then the other half are like modern. So I was really struggling to find curtains that fit like color wise and style wise. So that would be something that I really wish we had creative style for. Okay, sorry for the rants. This was a build where I really, really was wishing we had creative style. But anyway, now we're moving on to the library. And I think in the books, they even mentioned something about how Lucius Malfoy, like, curated his library, and it was super nice and super fancy. That's just going from memory. I couldn't find, like, the quote to prove it. That just sounds familiar to me. So I tried to make the library itself pretty grand. And I did that by having these kind of columns of books, you know, rather than having them all like on the outskirts, if that makes sense, like lining the room. I thought it'd be cool to have these kind of like just shelves and shelves of books. Obviously, again, we're kind of constricted with space and stuff, so it's not like humongous, but I think you kind of get the idea of where I was going through with that. And then I think I mentioned in my previous video, the bringing the outdoors in video, I did a library in that build as well, and I mentioned that I like to make libraries look really warm and comforting because that's how I like to read personally. But in this video especially, I really kind of nixed that idea. As you see, eventually there's literally no armchairs in there anyway, so you can't even sit down and just read your book like in the calm atmosphere, you know? It's designed to be cold and kind of just lackluster, you know? And I thought that that was kind of cool just to see it like that, or to have that idea. So now we're moving on to the study, and just like the rest of the build, I kind of just tried to make it boring and plain. And then I forgot to mention this earlier, but sometimes when I build, I like to kind of place all the furnishings that I know I need, like the fridges and the tables and the chairs and all that kind of stuff, just so it's all set out. And then after I do that, I'll go through and decorate a little bit more, just because I feel like it's kind of easier to decorate once everything is done and you just kind of know where it is, if that makes any sense. I feel like it helps me. So I do that in this build. As you'll see, it does kind of get furnished a little bit more, like, decoration-wise and, like, tiny bits of clutter-wise later. So just keep that in mind as well, that it does get a little bit more filled in, if that makes any sense. And then again, I don't know if you remember it from the books. I don't think they mention it in the movies, but in the books, they mention that when they're at the Malfoy Manor, that you just see all these kind of paintings with pale faces down the hallways, which is obviously meant to represent the Malfoys because they're all pale, you know, and they have the platinum blonde hair and stuff. And so I tried to put a ton of like portraits throughout the house. Obviously, we only have so many portraits in the correct style, so some of them do get reused again because, you know, The Sims isn't perfect. You kind of just have to go with things. But I did kind of like that idea of just having like a ton of portraits all throughout the house to represent the different Malfoys and like their different generations and stuff. And then one other thing you might notice that I did throughout the house was that I used the like floor carpets, not the carpets that you place that are in decorations, but like the floors that you would find in build mode. I use those as kind of rugs, and I just kind of placed them where I wanted them, you know? And I thought that that was nice because, first of all, a lot of the rugs that we do have aren't really in the correct style for what I was going for, so they just looked out of place. And it kind of lets you pick the color as well as how big you want it and stuff. So I thought that was kind of fun to do in this build. And since a lot of the carpets are kind of outdated looking in the game, it kind of fit in because obviously this is an outdated looking build. So before I started the build, I had looked up pictures of the Malfoy Manor from the books, or from the movies, I mean, obviously, just so I could kind of get an idea of what it looked like from the outside. And then I also found a few different floor plans, just so I'd have something to model off of, you know. And one of them had mentioned a tea room, and I didn't really know what that was. I don't live in the UK, so we don't have tea rooms in the United States, you know. But I looked up a bunch of pictures, and I thought it would be super fun to include in this room, or in this house, because obviously Harry Potter is based in England, and they have tea rooms and stuff there, especially because it's an old castle, you know? So I did have fun furnishing this. Kind of the premise behind a tea room is just obviously it's like a smaller little dining room where you would have like your friends over to have tea. So it's just like little tables, several of them, not much decoration, just kind of like a small little dining room, like an extra dining room. I think probably the best like alternative that we have in the United States for this would be like a breakfast nook. I think some people call it like a small little dining room off of the kitchen. You know, I mean, I'm not like a design expert, but that's just the impression that I got personally. And then you'll see in just a second, I'm kind of just adding a bunch of like chairs around the house. I tried not to add too many chairs because again, I want this to be like cold and dark, you know, it's not a comforting place to be. But I did like just these kind of like side ottomans, not side ottomans, just ottomans, they're just called ottomans. But I just tried to add some of those around the house. I tried not to add a ton of like fluffy armchairs, you know, that look comforting and inviting because again, I don't think the Malfoys would have anything like that in their house. But I just like to put like little chairs around the house because it kind of fills it out a little bit. And then now that we're done with the chairs, we're going to add in some little tables around the house. I really, really like these kind of thin tables that they've added into The Sims 4. I think they're called console tables. I'm not an expert, that's just my understanding. I think they're really cool to just kind of throw in a few different places because I think in real life it would be really helpful to just have little tables you could put like your keys on and stuff, and they kind of just fill in the space as well, so I do like those. And then you can see here I got a little shelf happy. I added like 12 million shelves and then I was like, no, this looks stupid, don't do that. So then I got rid of a lot of the shelves and I added in just a few around the place. I later fill them up when I go through decorations, but I thought that that would be nice for the Malfoys to have that in their study so they could put like potions and whatnot, I don't know, magical things on their shelves. So now we're going to go through, and I think I add this little bar thing. Again, I think in the Harry Potter world, if the Malfoys wanted something to drink, they would get their elves to do it, because we already talked about how terrible they are to their elves, but I just thought it looked cool to have like that huge globe, you know? And then I was looking through the plants, like the potted plants, because I thought that they'd be good to put around the house, you know, and I found like one, I think, as you can see here, that I ended up liking. But when I was looking at these pretty little flowers and these like vivacious bushes and stuff, I was like, the Malfoys wouldn't have this. What am I talking about? Like, they would totally not have beautiful living things in their house. They would have skulls and like dark marks. I don't know. And then now we're about to go around the lower floor, and I'm adding some of those cracks in the wall. I didn't add any of the like water stains or the ripped walls or anything like that because obviously it's a stone castle. There wouldn't be water stains, you know, it didn't make any sense, but I thought that those kind of cracks in the wall would be super cool because it's supposed to be a really old, kind of elegant, exquisite castle, you know, so I'm sure there would be lots and lots of cracks in the wall, and it just kind of adds a little bit of detail, you know, so I thought that was cool to kind of just throw randomly throughout the first floor. And I don't typically build a ton of like old and decrepit buildings, so I don't use these like accented things that came in vampires very often, but when I do build them, then I love them, you know, so I think that that was like a really cool addition that they added to the game. And then of course I had to add a few little spider webs around the house because if you think about it, like, yes, they have house elves, but like that's a huge house. Like, who in the world could manage and take care of that huge of a house? You know, it just, of course there would be spider webs. Like, there has to be spider webs in a huge castle like that. But anyway, now we're moving on to some little pictures. Again, I tried to put a ton of portraits throughout the house to make it look like the Malfoys lived there, you know, with all of their generations and wealth and all that kind of stuff. And then the room we're about to start right now, in the floor plan that I had found, it called this a trophy room, which would be kind of like family heirlooms and trophies and whatnot. But we don't really have a ton of those in the game. We just don't. They're not really in the game yet, like trophies and stuff, enough that you could make a room off of it. So I just decided to make it kind of a sculpture room, like an art room, but like a creepy art room. I don't know if that makes sense. But so I added these like creepy old sculptures that came with vampires, just because I thought that they looked cool, like in that environment. And then I decided to add that like satanic looking goat thing in the dining room on the mantle just because I thought it looked cool. And then this little horse as well. It's kind of cute. I don't know. I just wanted to add it in. I thought it'd be cool. And then I'm scrolling through the sculptures. I can't remember. Oh yes, I remembered we have that knight thing, and I thought it'd be perfect. So I added a few of those around, and I like that it came in silver too because I wanted everything to come in silver for the Malfoys. So I did really like that little knight sculpture thing. That was really cool. So like I said before, I'm trying to make it look like these are like potions and kind of old artifacts and books and stuff on this shelf. I tried not to fill it too much because I felt like that would look kind of stupid just to have every slot filled, you know? But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool just to have a little shelf with stuff. And then I had forgotten we have that cool quill, so I thought the quill was kind of cool because in Harry Potter, you know, of course they always write with quills. And then in just a second, right about now, you'll see that I have that little side room. It's called like a receptional room or reception something. It's like a fancy coat closet, so I just added that little coat rack. So if guests come over or whatever, they can take their coats off since it's apparently so cold in England. And then I found this cool like dove looking thing, and I thought it could kind of be like a family crest. I think the Malfoy family crest would definitely not be two pretty little birds flying around. I think it would be like a serpent killing another serpent or something. But unfortunately, we don't have anything like that in the game. So I kind of just had to make do with what I had, you know. But I thought that was a kind of cool idea just to have like their family crest or their pseudo family crest like right when you walk into the house. So now we're just moving on to that little like stairwell hallway thing for the elves. I'm just putting in like some matching floor tiles and fixing the stairs and putting in some lights and stuff, so nothing super exciting right there. And then I do add in some curtains as well in just a second that I copied from the other room to make it match a little bit more. And I did try to make a lot of the curtains like a greeny color. I didn't want the whole build to be green because yes, they're from Slytherin, but they're not like only Slytherin, you know? So I tried not to make it super, super green because I felt like that would be kind of tacky. But I just tried to put like a little like accents of green throughout the house, like the curtains. So yeah, we finished furnishing the first floor. We're about to move on to the second, and the next part, or the last part I guess, should be up probably within a few days. We'll see. So tune in if you want to check that out. This is up on the gallery as well, and I hope I see you next time.